Have you ever heard of the returning soldier effect?
You mean the proven fact that during longer times of war, the number of children born are more often male than in peacetime?
Exactly. And the reason for that might be that people are stooping more because it's war.
Excuse me, mother, stooping?
Yes, doing the dirty, dancing the flash mambo, knowing someone in the biblical sense.
You mean hiding the salami?
Piercing the hogshead.
Riding a dragon upon St. George?
Taking a turn at Bushy Park.
Putting the Pope into Rome?
Having some horizontal refreshment.
Or plainly put, having sex?
Yes, it could be that. Or it could be because tall men are better at surviving war and making boy babies.
No way. This needs a closer look.
How close?
Mother.
Welcome.
Welcome to season 1 of TimeGhost Cold War coverage in our series War to War, where we cover the events of the decade after World War II that brought men from the brink of destruction to the threshold of the stars. I am Anna Deinhard.
And I'm Astrid Deinhard. Hello, darlings. So, wars are traditionally fought by men, and as a logical consequence, more men die. In World War II, 70 to 75% of all deaths, civilian or military together, are men. As a result, during the war, the number of men of all ages worldwide sinks below 98 men for every 100 women.
But here's the thing. Already by 1945, the ratio of male humans on the planet has risen to 98.6. By 1970, it will have again reached close to a 50-50 ratio with 99.7 men per 100 women. And by 1980, it will have equalized.
This phenomenon, increases birth during prolonged war, is not new and not unknown. In 1883, Karl Dusing defends his dissertation Die Faktoren, welche die Sexualität entscheiden, the factors that decide sexuality, where he suggests that the phenomenon is a natural regulation of the status quo.
Here is the one who coins the phrase the returning soldier effect, and 3 decades later it's observed at a great scale during World War I. So, by the Second World War, it's a widely known thing. Already in 1942, it's noted that it's happening again, with Time magazine publishing an article titled Does War Breed Boys? Reporting. In peacetime, about 105 boys are born for every 100 girls. During and just after wars, the ratio mysteriously increases to about 108 boys for every 100 girls. For the first time in World War II, this phenomenon has appeared in several warring nations of Europe, according to reports from Sweden last fortnight.
The article notes that it's a mystery, but offers a few possible explanations. The most interesting one, perhaps being the explanation of theologian Johann Süßmilch, who observed the phenomenon in 18th century Europe. Divine providence, he said, brings more boy babies into the world to compensate for the slaughter of men in battle.
Okay, substitute divine providence with nature, and he's not as far off as some of us might think. Because here's the thing, it seems that this is not the only thing that occurs naturally and perhaps logically to keep our species from going extinct during catastrophes.
Actually, it might even be that parents choose to produce more babies of one gender when this is needed.
What? You can choose the sex of your baby now? Okay, what are all those gender reveal events then about?
Well, not quite choose, but the hypothesis is that the environmental effects create a subconscious, or if you like, involuntary choice that is good for the survival of the species. It turns out that during famines, when logically the future of our existence will depend on having enough mothers to give birth to more children, the ratio of female births go up.
Okay, but that's not quite what I wanted to talk about. What about all these tall men and all that sex?
Behave, child, right?
Never!
Make an effort. Let's start with another possible explanation. Stress factors. I'm sticking with the other kinds of catastrophes first. Look at the opposite, if you like, right? So.
Okay, as long as we get back to sex and war later on, then I'm good.
Yeah, sure. Before we continue, we should note that male fetuses are slightly more fragile in utero. When a society is hit by sudden war, terror, or famine, stress hormones like cortisol surge. That hormonal storm appears to cull more male embryos, trimming the usual 105 boys per 100 girls towards parity.
Evolutionary biologists dub it the Travis-Willard effect. Invest in offspring most likely to survive. These effects have been verified when, for instance, after 9/11, California's male-to-female ratio fell, matching a surge in male fetal deaths.
Studies on couples trying to conceive have also found that stressed mothers with elevated cortisol predict fewer sons.
A 2024 meta-review of millions of births in 82 countries confirms crises usually cut male births, with the severity of the dip scaling with shock severity.
So, do crises create more girls? Not exactly. Think of male pregnancies as the canaries in the demographic coal mine, right? More likely to falter when the environment turns hostile. Female fetuses a touch hardier ride out the storm.
Now, you'd think that this would disprove the returning soldier effect, but there is a possible hormonal effect that has to do with prolonged war. You see, it's been shown that chronic low-grade stress can raise women's circulation testosterone and androgens.
That appears to boost the survival odds of male embryos and may even trigger the ovary towards releasing eggs that favor faster swimming Y-bearing sperm.
Wait a minute. Boy sperm swims faster than girl sperm? That's not fair.
Well, quick and fast isn't always better, as any sexual active woman can assure you. Anyway, this study suggests that in tough but prolonged conditions, mothers in relatively good shape invest in sons who could reap big reproductive payoffs when peace returns.
Bavarian post-World War II census data shows that the counties that lost the highest share of men in 1945 posted the steepest rise in male births throughout 1949. That study proposed that female choices and male competitiveness under a skewed sex ratio favor high testosterone pairings, and those pairings statistically produce more boys.
So, across the drawn-out conflict, the hormonal chessboard shifts. Scarcer men and chronically stressed, yet resilient women regenerate a biochemical nudge that helps restock the male population.
But there's an issue with this idea. Big bursts of baby boys afterwards might not be about hormones at all. There are plenty of other statistical effects that can explain some of the demographic findings. And honestly, lab studies tying moms' hormones to baby sex are patchy at best. So the hormone idea could just be coincidence, not cause.
Okay, and yet we know for a fact that more boys are born during prolonged armed conflict. So, if it isn't hormones, what's going on then?
Are we finally going to get to lots of sex with tall men now?
Not quite. We still have some other hypotheses to cover before we get to simple carnal desires. There might be a genetic effect at play. Gallatley's hypothesis offers a relatively new idea to explain why more boys are born than girls, a pattern that becomes even more noticeable during and immediately after major conflicts like the World Wars.
The hypothesis proposes that there's a specific gene located on an autosome, a non-sex chromosome, that influences the sex ratio of offspring. Crucially, its effect is expressed through the male reproductive system. Now, as we know, the male Y chromosome is provided by the male sperm. In simple statistics, half of all sperm are X chromosome and half are Y.
But this autosome gene might make a man produce more of one or the other kind of sperm. For instance, one version of the gene might make a man more likely to father sons, while another might make him more likely to father daughters.
Now link this to the phenomenon of replacement births, children born specifically because a previous sibling died prematurely.
Okay, so not only the male fetuses die at higher rates, but male children also tend to have higher mortality rates in infancy and childhood compared to females.
Yeah, because boys do stupid shit like play with fire, dare each other to do idiotic, dangerous stunts, and get into fights all the time.
Not only, boys have weaker immune systems as well.
See, men are the weaker sex.
Don't tell anybody. Yeah, but the danger part in male mortality rate is especially significant during wars. Remember, the 70 to 75% proportion of total World War II casualties. Now, it's suggested that parents have a tendency to replace children who die prematurely, regardless of the sex of the child lost.
Okay, got it. In wars, fathers who are genetically predisposed to have more sons are, by extension, more likely to have a son die prematurely. So, when they then have a replacement child, which sounds horrible, they are more likely to pass on their male-creating genetic variants to that new offspring, right?
Yes. This mechanism continuously increases the frequency from child to father, maintaining the male excess at birth over several generations. In support of this idea, analysis of large demographic data sets indicate that parents do tend to replace children who die, and confirms the higher premature mortality rate for male children.
Moreover, genealogical studies have shown that this is passed on to the son.
Genetic studies have identified the specific genes that may be involved. Moreover, genetic quality can influence the proportion of sons he fathers.
But none of this is conclusive. So, can we get to the tall guys and sex now, please?
Yes. But
Nice.
the tall guy thing isn't. Yes, my child. But the tall guy thing isn't what you think it is. Okay?
How do you know what I think, mother?
I think you're thinking of tall guys as the male version of blonde women, sexually desirable but not smart enough to screw in a light bulb on their own.
Thanks, Mom. I am blonde and perfectly able to screw in a light bulb on my own, so thank you very much. No. I'm thinking of the idea that taller men are more likely to survive war and that they are more likely to sire sons. So, apologize.
Well, you'd think that taller men would die at higher rates in war, right? Because, they provide a bigger target. after all.
Yes, but the proponents of this idea suggest that this is not the case at all. No, it isn't. Using data from the Great War, they found that British soldiers who survived the trenches were on average a full 2.36 centimeters taller than those who did not. Looking at Italian soldiers in the same war, it was found that each additional centimeter of height increased survival rates significantly.
That's weird, yes, but those studies did not hold up when other researchers expanded the sample rates, and more importantly, there's zero proof that tall men father more boys. Zero.
So much for the tall man theory, but there's still the idea of doing it more often. Let's talk about the smooshing.
Okay, here there is some plausible evidence of a reason for the returning soldier effect. Basically, it's like this. The more sex a couple has in the early and late phases of ovulation, the greater the chance that a Y chromosome sperm will fertilize the egg. While not exactly understood, it's pretty much established through several biochemical processes we won't get into here.
So, if you want a boy, just get down to it every hour of the day. I can see many reasons why this idea might appeal to young couples.
Yeah, but for any given couple, these effects are too small to have any real meaning. You know, the chances of conceiving a boy increases only by a tiny percentage. However, if you apply this to millions of couples, on a general population level, it might be enough to explain our little phenomena.
Okay, but hang on a minute. How do they suddenly have more sex during war? Aren't the men away at the front? Are you suggesting that the girls at home are stupping someone else?
I like that word. Well, there it is. Birth out of wedlock went up during the war and right after. But that's irrelevant for what we're talking about. For us, it's literally the returning soldier we need to look at.
So you mean as in the boys coming home on leave to their girls with limited time and pining couples wanting to get as much out of their days together as they can?
Well, yes, and that sex is stress relief, to not mention the adage that absence makes the hearts grow fonder.
What, you're saying that young people are horny? And when they haven't had some for a while, they'll copulate like rabbits? That doesn't sound true. They'll do it like they do it on the Discovery Channel and all the time.
To be generous, there's also the emotional bit about needing closeness to compensate for all the horrors you're experiencing, and the fear of losing the one you love, driving a let's get as much out of this while it lasts feelings.
Okay, so the gist is lots of sex while the woman is ovulating leads to a slightly greater chance of getting pregnant with a male fetus.
That's the idea, and while none of these hypotheses are conclusively proven to be the main reason to date, the phenomena of increased male birth during war is well established. The best guess at this point is that it's a combination of child replacement, skewed by genetic disposition, and higher rates of sex during leave and right after conflict ends.
Which is supported by the fact that increased male birth ratios peaks in 1947 and then gradually returns to normal. And it's not just the gender ratio that goes up right after the war, but births in general. This era will be called the baby boom and give birth to a large generation who will grow up in relative peace compared to their parents and grandparents.
A generation that, especially in the Western world, for better and worse, will usher in a period of progressive social change and be part of economic growth never seen before in history. A time that will last until we too are overtaken by the gradual conservatism of increasing age and become known to the next generation as boomers, hopelessly out of touch with the zeitgeist.
You're not at all hopelessly out of touch with the zeitgeist, Mom.
I love you too, baby.
To learn more about another sexual effect of war, click somewhere here for our video about the venereal disease and drug epidemics that broke out after World War I, and how that had a surprising positive effect to increase equality for women in the 1920s.
Be a part of our continued effort to dive into the depths of human history by joining the TimeGhost army on patreon.com or timeghost.tv.
1, 2, 3.
Excelsior!